Okay, episode 1 of the Locking series, series 3. I will say it was series 3. Like I always try, I have to say, because of GDPR, if you don't want to be taped, please could you leave, because we're recording this for people that can't make tonight. Okay. Thanks for turning up tonight. It's our first one in for 2021. And when this was mentioned to me, I really wasn't that motivated about colour. But I hope people have seen my post today. I saw a presentation this morning with Donna and Gareth, and welcome Donna and Gareth for joining us tonight. And I was in awe. And what I thought I knew about paint and colour, I look at something and I quite like it. But this totally blew me away. And one of the things that Gareth and I talked about after the meeting and the presentation by Donna was that if there's a big uptake, maybe on a Monday to a Friday, whatever day, we'll do a session which are more in depth, because we could really go to town on this and really explore the different kind of colour schemes, etc. that just, I hope, will blow you away tonight, because it blew me away. I've been ranting and raving about this all day. And like I said earlier on my Facebook group, if somebody doesn't get anything out of this, we will give a 20% off your next paint order, subject to conditions, of course, because Gareth made me put that one in. And I was just blown away. I really was. And I hope this is never going to finish in an hour. Not in a million years. So, Donna, would you like to come and introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Donna Taylor, and I'm the Principal Technical Colour Consultant at PPG, better known as Johnstone's Paints. And I've been with the company for just over 20 years, working in colour for the past 12. So I've had a bit of a dabble in commercial, in the sales sector, and a bit in the marketing, and now I'm in technical with colour. Okay.
Gareth, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Nick. What I'd like to do is to thank you for the invite, actually. You've just said it's the first one of the year. We've done a couple before. I'd like to think they were both informative. But I think there's a little bit of pressure being put on Donna, saying how good it was, the run through this morning, but she can take that, that's not a problem. But I think if you just keep an open mind on this, everybody's got some sort of interest in colour. They might think they've not, but I think when Donna starts talking, you might just get, she might just draw you in. So with that note, I'll leave it there if that's okay, Nick.
No, absolutely. And I'm just going to pass you over to Donna straight away. Donna, because you have got a lot to say, and try to get it all in with a sort of an hour plus. You might even beat Paul's record tonight, because he went on for an hour and a half one evening. Oh, sorry, Paul. Donna, have you got the slides ready, Anthony?
I have.
Get down.
They're not coming off my computer today, Nick.
Oh.
Do I need to screen share?
Yes.
Yeah. You've got, if you hit that green button down at the bottom there.
No Christmas jumper on, Anthony. Oh, we've had that, haven't we?
Yeah, I've got a Valentine's jumper on next week. Got your face on it.
Right, if you could just let me know what you can see.
I can see.
Yeah, that looks good to us.
You can, is it the full slides that you were seeing on your screens?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff. Shall I kick off?
Please do.
Wonderful. So obviously I've just introduced myself as Donna Taylor. I'll not go into anything else other than that, because I've just explained that part of it. What I will tell you is the presentation tonight is going to consist of 3 10-minute categories with a question and answer session after each. So hopefully it may spark a lot of interest and questions. I'll try my best to get through as many as we can, but I've got a lot of slides to get through, and I've only got 10-minute gaps throughout the 3, so we'll do as best. The categories tonight are colour psychology, colour application, and our most up-to-date colour trends. So just before we jump straight into colour psychology, I just wanted to point out that whilst it's assumed that we can see approximately 10 million colours, which many of us can, these are created from just 11 basic identifiable colours. And what I mean by that is if we took a yellow and we added white, this would then become a lemon. So it then makes itself an alias of its actual identity because its original form is only going to be a yellow. And that's the same for all of these colours. And interestingly enough, pink is the only one of them 11 colours which is a tint of another colour but has its own identity. So
how about the black, grey and white?
They're achromatic, so they're not deemed as colour as such. To a colour expert, they're not considered a colour, but lighting influences does have an effect on these. But we'll cover that later in the presentation. It does come up. So in addition to this colour terminology, I just want to explain the attributes of what actually makes a colour. So the hue, H-U-E, is actually the true name for an identity of a colour. So it's what classifies it as being a red or a blue or a green. A tint is that particular hue in question with white added. A shade is a hue with black added, and a tone is a shade with grey added. And then the nuance of a colour, which is the bottom grayscale indicator, this is particularly used in achromatic colours or in neutrals, and this relates to the value of a colour. So the lightness and the darkness indicator, basically. And each individual colour, at least within our colour spectrums, have their own unique light reflectance value. So you may have seen this lettering on some of the colour cards. It'll be listed as LRV and then followed by the number. So this is made up of however much grey is being added to each of the colours, or however much white or however much black. So for example, if you had a very pale orange, really pale orange, that would have a high white content and it would be high in value, and its light reflectance value would also be high, probably anything in the region of 60 to 80 percentage points out of 100. And then if you add black, the more amount of black that you add to a colour, it becomes desaturated. These become the shades, and black actually absorbs all light. So the darker the hue is, the less light that will reflect back. And these will sit roughly between anything from 2 up to about 40% in light reflectance value. And then you have the mid-tone colours, excuse me, which are made up of maybe the centre part of the grayscale indicator. Now, it may seem like that that's not quite relevant, but it can be, and especially for using in landlords where they might have a block of flats, because in circulation areas, the light reflectance value can be used to manipulate the surface structures of walls to ensure that anyone who may be partially sighted can identify their way to their room or navigate out of the building once they've left their room. And this is actually backed up by the Equalities Act for anyone who may have a visual impairment. And further to that as well, once you understand the tints, tones, shades and values of colours, this will help you then be able to pick up a colour brochure, look at the light reflectance value of the colour, identify the room dimensions and know instinctively how light, how dark or how mid-tone colour will fit in that space.
So is that the numbers at the bottom of the colour chart codes?
Yeah, it will specifically say LRV, because some colour charts just have a reference to the undercoat references for that colour.
Yes. Do you know, I did not know that.
So the colour psychology section, it is all about colour psychology and understanding the effects that colour can have on our psyche. And the aim of this section is to help determine what colour scheme is suitable for specific ambient requirements. So colour has the capacity to impact moods. It can have an influence on our mental and physical well-being. And whilst there are universal associations with colour, we also have an individual and cultural response to it. So understanding the psychological effects of each colour and considering the intended use of the colour in a space can help create just the right ambience. And in addition to that, and as we've just mentioned, the light is made up of wavelengths of colours, and when these wavelengths strike our retina, they are converted into electrical impulses that pass on to the hypothalamus. So this in turn affects our hormones, creating a physiological response to the colour that we're seeing. And all the different colours that we do see have different wavelengths, and therefore they affect the endocrine system and consequently our moods and stress levels in various different ways. So first we'll look at red. Psychologically, it's the colour of vitality, passion and action. Its positive attributes are warm, exciting, stimulating, energetic, and it can remind us of physical courage. With all positives, there are some negatives, and if the wrong tone of red is used for the wrong purpose or in the wrong environment, it can give the impression of time passing faster than it actually is, and it can seem a bit demanding and aggressive. And from a physiological point of view, red travels on the longest wavelength, meaning that our eyes have to adjust to it the most, so it can create strain when we're surrounded by it for long periods of time. And its stimulus is that it can raise our pulse and heart rates and can activate the fight or flight instinct within us. So this actually should come last, but it's in the wrong order on the screen, and I can't change the screen because it's just a photo. But green is the most balanced colour ever. It sits central within the wavelengths and it requires no adjustment when it strikes the eye. It's the colour of good luck, generosity, peace, harmony, refreshment, growth. It has links with nature. When the world's plentiful of green, it suggests that there's presence of water and little danger of famine. So on a primitive level, it assures us that the world around us is alive. And there's few negative attributes associated with green, but still, if it's used incorrectly, then some would perceive it to be a little bit boring and bland. And the physiological aspect of it is that it's been seen to lower blood pressure and can relieve headaches and neuralgia.
Better paint Gareth's house with that.
So yellow is another stimulating colour, but rather than in a physical sense, its stimulus is emotional. It is linked to optimism and confidence, self-esteem, emotional strength, friendliness and creativity. But it does have to be used with caution again for some instances, because intense tones can be quickly overpowering, and the wrong tone in a colour scheme can cause self-esteem to plummet, and this gives rise to fear and anxiety, which relates to the term our yellow streak. But generally, being surrounded by yellow can also encourage the brain to release more serotonin, which is a feel-good chemical. Blue is related to the mind, but its stimulus is one of thought instead of emotions. It's the colour of communication, trust, intelligence, logic. Researchers suggested, and I think even proven in some instances, that blue is the world's most favourite colour. But it can be a little bit cold and unfriendly and maybe a little bit aloof. But seeing this colour can cause the body to produce chemicals that are actually calming, and it can slow the physiological functions, which reduces muscle tension and lowers blood pressure and pulse rates. And studies have also shown that soft pastel blues can aid concentration, while strong blues will stimulate clear thought. Now, the next bunch of psychological attributes have been put together rather quickly, and I've not put the negative attributes. There's not that many. So I'm just going to touch on the positives of how these colours can help you in creating spaces. So pink reflects innocence and kindness and induces feelings of calm, protection, warmth and nurture. It can be used to lessen irritation and aggression, and it is connected with feelings of unselfish love. And it's been mentioned before, we had the conversation this morning that in commercial environments, you have this colour appearing quite often in institutes. Well, they need to use it for that purpose of lessening aggression. So you're seeing it in prisons, you're seeing it in mental institutes and things like that. But overall, the idea of pink is that it's very, very nurturing and very comforting. Orange relates to the physical and the emotional elements, focusing our minds on physical comfort. It has links with food, warmth, shelter, abundance and sensuality. And it is by far the most flamboyant colour ever on the colour spectrum. There's no denying that. It's a very warm, happy and indulging colour. And purple, this is our most royal colour. And from it, back in prehistoric time, it was never even seen as a colour. Over 12,000 seashells had to be crushed to create just 1.5 grams of dye. The pigment, which was just enough to dye one toga. And consequently, that's why it was only ever used for royalty, for our kings and queens' robes purposely chosen to display the rich sophistication, the wealth, the prosperity, the vision, the luxury, the authenticity, and even the quality that royalty is accustomed to. And purple also has strong links to spirituality. It's highly introverted and encourages deep contemplation or meditation. And even pale hues of purple will create a calming and tranquil ambience. Brown has a very large percentage of black, and consequently it has much of the same seriousness, but is warmer and softer. Its associations is with earth, the natural world and all things organic. It represents stability and solid, reliable colour that most people tend to find quietly supportive. It is the most used colour ever. I mean, if you think about it, it offers many, many different combinations of beiges and greys and creams and taupes. So it's no surprise that it is very widely used.
And magnolia?
No, not magnolia. We don't do magnolia.
We don't do magnolia.
So grey is the only colour to have psychological neutrality with little distraction to its presence. It's timeless, it's practical, and it's very solid. Being an achromatic colour, it will undoubtedly fit most colour schemes. It can, however, take on a very industrial feel, so setting the right tone for the mood that you require in the space will require consideration. And I think with that, it just means if you've got a cool feeling space, warm up the grey, have a little bit of an undertone of colour into it, just to give it a little bit more life so that it's not feeling cold.
What do you keep using undertone, you said. What do you mean by that?
So this is particularly common with greys and neutrals. Well, obviously a grey that has an influence of colour is actually a neutral. It's where you might have a grey that's mixed with a blue, so that you can see that it's a grey colour, but in some varying light conditions, you can just also see that hint of blue that's coming through. And you also get that happening when you've got a contrasting colour to that undertone in your room. So if you imagine red and green are contrasting colours. So if you had a grey with a slight undertone of green, which may not be very evident just on the wall without any furniture in there, but then you go and put a red sofa up against that wall, the green will come through on that grey because it is vying with the red that it contrasts with. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Because that's what you were talking about today a lot, and that's what fascinated me, and we'll come on to that in section 2, I think, isn't it?
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
So black absorbs all light in the colour spectrum, and therefore it's presumed to be absent of all colour. The psychological properties are quite immense. It evokes a feeling of formality, sophistication, glamour, security, efficiency and substance. And it is the colour of authority and power and strength and even independence and intelligence. So, and black is quite a good contender at the moment for saturating spaces for that sense of privacy and silence. And just as black absorbs all light, white reflects all light. It is pure with an appearance of cleanliness and hygiene, almost a touch me not attitude that creates a sense of sterility. White is light and bright and it can create a sense of space. However, at the same time, too much in one space could be quite straining to the eye, in particular in bedrooms where a more relaxed and somber space is needed for that wind down time. So they're the psychological attributes of the 11 basic colours. So just to link that back into landlords, the well-being standard, the well-building standard recognises an importance of colour in terms of the mind and suggests that a beautiful and meaningful space in which design aesthetics are expressly considered can have a positive impact on a person's morale and mood, and can also impart a sense of comfort, ease, and potentially mitigate stress. So because colour can dramatically affect the look and feel of a room, it's vital to make the right choice, because careful selection and the use of psychology, colour then can be used to subtly influence the moods and create that required ambience that people are searching for. So these images on the screen, the top row images are indicate that they are active colours. Red is ideal for creating a buzz and stimulating conversation. Orange is associated with a friendly and cheerful atmosphere. Yellow has creative and optimistic qualities. And then the bottom row images are all passive colours. Green is perfect for areas to relax due to its balanced and rejuvenating properties. Blue is calming and quite versatile, so will fit well in any given environment. And purple relates to luxury, but also has an air of importance with meditative qualities. So once it's been decided what kind of ambience is required, we can then consider the next steps to creating the colour schemes. So from a landlord perspective, you may think that this is not a requirement, and this information may not be relevant for you when you're designing your spaces, because you have to consider that your tenants will be coming into these spaces and putting their own stamp on things. But what it might do, it would give you scope to be able to discuss colour choices with your tenants. So that'll give you some more connection with them, maybe having a little bit more control over what is applied in the areas, so that it's easy for you to go back in and maintain at a later date. And it also shows that you have an active interest in the tenants' needs, which I think a lot of tenants are looking for from their rentals and landlords at this current time.
And as Sarah said, because there's really kind of three sectors, you've got the serviced accommodation, where people are like short term, maybe they're a week, maybe a couple of days, and you'll have people down like let's just take Brighton, more of a holiday kind of place. So that will create a different ambience than maybe somebody in the city. Yes. And again, you've got then the HMO market. Okay. It depends what age group you're letting out to. Will again have an important, because if you get that right, and landlords are there to make money. Let's make no bones about it. They're there to make money. If they get that right with that particular tenant, yes, they can charge a good rent, because the air that they're in will be suitable for that individual. And I'm not saying you repaint for whichever tenant, but what I'm saying is that if you know you've got young people, you wouldn't put them maybe a calming kind of influence in that kind of place. But again, on the South Coast, bold, friendly, cheerful, because that's the kind of environment that you're staying in. So absolutely. And we talked about that, and we're going to go into that. I just wanted to relay that to what members are thinking and where would that fit. So sorry to cut across you, Donna.
No, that's absolutely fine, because that actually concludes the end of that section.
Okay.
Well, guys, if you want to pop some questions into the chat, then I'll start going about reading those out. I'll check the Facebook as well. But just before we do that, I had a question for you, Donna, which I was surprised it didn't come up really. And that was the gendered implications of color. Obviously, we went past pink there. And if I had an HMO, I wouldn't paint all the rooms pink because I would immediately I wouldn't be able to get any men living there because they don't want to live in a pink room.
Yeah.
What thoughts on that? Is it just maybe an old hangover, or is that a genuine risk?
I think it is an old hangover actually, because we are talking about psychology of pink in itself, but when you actually look at a collection of pinks, there's lots and lots and lots. You have pinks what might have an undertone of blue to them, so they're less feminine in their appearance, and they can quite easily become gender neutral. So yeah, pink, yeah, definitely pink can still work. It really depends on your tenant. It depends on, you know, who that person is and, you know, how they will react to that pink.
Where I used to live, virtually the downstairs was pink purples going through the living room up to the stairs. So it was a pink kind of room, and everybody came in who loved it, thought, oh yeah, I could buy this house, and it sold the first person that saw it. So it was mixing them two colors together, purples and pinks, yes, with mauves as well. So absolutely, but it's really important because I'm really looking forward to the second part, because you're starting to talk even more about color, different shades, etc., etc. So yeah, you probably won't get a lot of questions, but it lays a good base for what you're going to be talking about, is the different ambiances of different colors, what red is, what pink is, what purple is, what white is, what black is. What was the other color? Blue and yellow. That was really, really important. See, I'm listening.
Just think Power Rangers, Nick. That's how I remember them.
Power Rangers.
So yeah, you do mention that, but I've got a couple of questions here. So firstly, Donna, you kept mentioning the word achromatic. Can you just remind us what that means?
Yeah, achromatic refers to either a black, a white, or a grey. And achromatic schemes are created where you may use all three together, or just vary in different tones of greys, and you don't have any colour at all in the rooms. They're all just made up of, even white rooms, just various different levels of white, because some can be a dull white, some can be a really bright white. And so they would be deemed as achromatic schemes. Okay. It's just absence of colour. Achromatic just means absent of colour.
Makes sense. Like monochromatic, isn't it?
Well, no, well, it depends where you come from, actually. Yeah, some people do refer to them as monochromatic, but monochromatic, which comes up later, also refers to tonal, which means creating colours from one colour family, but in different tints, tones and shades. So, yeah.
Faye's actually commented on the Facebook here with the etymology. It's from Greek, meaning absence of colour. Works well enough for me. Next question. So if we want tenants to feel good as soon as they walk into an HMO, because I think that's what many people are thinking. Yes. Which colours should we use? Is there any guidelines? Blues, greens, oranges?
Sorry, my partner's just come in and I didn't quite catch that question. I'm just going to turn my speaker up.
Okay.
Can you just repeat that question? Sorry.
Of course. So if we want tenants to feel good as soon as they walk into an HMO, which colour should we use? Blue, green, orange?
Well, I think that rather depends on what space they're walking into and the direction of the space, and also, well, it's a good one, that, because any colour can be impressive if it's applied correctly. I don't want to talk, it's going to give too much away for the next section if
I know what's coming, Anthony.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll answer that one later then.
There's a room painted exactly the same colour, yeah, and you won't believe it's the same colour.
Okay. Well, let's answer that one in a second. And just a final question, also maybe answered later. Are there colours you would steer clear of in residential properties?
Don't answer that one. Answer it.
Okay.
Well,
We'll move
I
on,
wouldn't. I wouldn't colour scheming, but from a landlord's point of view, I get that it's going to be a very daring move to put really, really bold colours, because it's not to everybody's taste. And if it's put into an empty property for the hope of having tenants coming in, the colour might not resonate with that tenant. And colour it's a funny thing, because while it's impactful, it sparks interest immediately. It's the one thing that grabs your attention when you see colour in its full form, and it can have an everlasting effect on a person. So, and you've also got to think as well that there's many people what might have endured in their lifetimes misfortunes, and a lot of people can link that with a specific colour at that time. This is why when we talk about psychology of colour, we usually say that you relatively keep an open mind, because the psychological attributes of a colour will only be as successful as the mood that that person is in when they're experiencing being around that colour. So, yeah, it's very subjective.
We'll move on, but I've had a couple of people in the chat saying, "What about Magnolia? You mentioned avoid those," but
that's just me. I'm a colour consultant. I love colour. I love everything colour, and I'm not opposed to magnolias. I do like creams. They work well, but from my point of view and in my role, if I'm taking the time to specify colours for a property, I wouldn't put magnolia in, because I know it's a contract colour. And if I want to create visual impact in that space for someone, that someone will immediately know that that's a contract colour if I put that in. So I just don't use it. I'm there to make a difference in that area, not to do what local authorities may do, or so it's just personal to me. That
he was telling us earlier this morning, yeah, that's exactly how she come across. Yeah, she can go, don't use that, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Yes, do this in the next section. Magnolia.
I mean, I agree with you, but it's very hard to agree when I'm sat in front of a magnolia wall at the minute. So I'll just put up a virtual background and we'll move on.
Yeah, but you rent.
Yeah.
That's the point. Most people just go in, and this is where the thing is about putting colour into people's homes. For long-term tenants, that's what they're going to want, and they'll look after the house. But I'm still in Donna's thunder here. So Donna, I'm going to shut up, honestly, because I want you to get on to the next stage. Go on, let's move on.
Right, screen share. Let me just get my presentation back. It's there.
There we
go.
There we go.
Technology is not my good point. So you're still seeing full slide screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Right, so welcome back again, even though nobody really left. I hope not. I'm glad you're still here. So this section's colour in practice. Here is where we're going to look at the considerations, hints and tips that can help guide you or your tenants to making the right choice of colour in the right direction. So there's main key considerations prior to choosing paint colours are knowing the requirements for the spaces. So in the case of landlords, I would imagine that'll be, if you could, get to know the client or tenant if possible. This will be a benefiting factor, because it will enable you to understand what they might be looking for in terms of rentals. How will a tenant judge your type of a scheme? So I think what I mean with this is what I was talking about, and this is just my personal take on colour. It could have that effect of it being a typical local authority property, but with something else, it could be a little bit more interesting than just magnolia or ivory or white, because I think it's these first impressions that will spark a bit more interest for them, and it gives the opinion of a well looked after property. And this in turn, I think, will encourage them to be more considerate and respectful of that space that they're living in, even though they're only renting that space. And then we need to look at, in this section, the use of the rooms, the lighting, the conditions, the room orientation, and the overall area space. These are key considerations toward choosing just the right colour to make just the right colour scheme. So this is a bit of a busy slide. Room orientation is vitally important in colour selection because the Earth's axis is tilted during the summer, so the sun's rays hit the Earth at a steep angle and the light doesn't spread out as much. So this creates an amount of light which just hitting one area. And the long daylight hours allows the Earth plenty of time to reach really high temperatures. And then on the adverse of that, during the winter, the sun's rays hit the Earth at a shallower angle and they're more spread out, which minimises the amount of energy that space is receiving. So the long nights and the short days prevent the Earth from warming up. And this is where you'll get really hot rooms and really cold rooms. So the light of north-facing rooms is less direct throughout the day and is consistently cooler feeling. So if you wanted to warm that up, I would compensate that by painting the room in a warmer colour. And also bolder colours will show up better than muted colours. So choosing colours a few shades deeper can create a cosier atmosphere in these rooms as well. And whites and lighter colours, on the other hand, may look dull and cold. For south-facing rooms, these get more light throughout the day. The colours are intensified. And so if you don't want the room to feel too energetic, offset the warm rays from the sun by going with softer, cooler hues. Dark colours will look brighter and very pale colours, especially off-whites, may become washed out during the height of the day. And then east-facing rooms, they get most light in the morning and that light is more yellow. And later in the day that room will then become darker and the light will be bluer. So if you plan on using that room later in the day or in the evening, then I would choose a warmer palette to offset that lack of natural light. And as the sun sets, west-facing rooms, these benefit from the lovely warm rays. Early morning lights will create shadows and make the room look dull, but by evening, it will have a really warm glow. So understanding this will enable application of most appropriate colours for that room and its uses. So it's kind of like saying, if you've got a small room, it's north facing, it gets very little light, it almost feels cold in there anyway. Don't go putting a cool or cold colour in there because it's just going to feel even colder, might even feel damp. But if you put a warmer hue, it will just lift that temperature feel of that space. And obviously adverse effect for south facing rooms, what are flooded with light. You can get away with putting passive colours, what are cooler in nature, to lower the temperature of that space. So how the natural light enters the space also affects the way that colours appear. As we've just talked about, the sun moves throughout the day and the amount and type of light coming into that space will change. So therefore, natural lighting is rarely the only source of lighting within that area. And the type of light bulb that I use can also affect how the colour appears. So here we have 3 examples of images. Them top images are natural daylight. One is indirect sunlight, one is indirect sunlight, so that's sun what's leaving that space, and then the other is artificial light, where there's no natural light in that area at all.
And they're all the same colour.
Pardon? They're all the same colour. Yeah.
And you wouldn't think it, looking at that, you would think there were 3 different colours used.
Yeah, that's the same colour. You can see with the sofa. The sofa's changed colour as well, and the lampshade. So the bulb choice for the artificial light is going to matter a lot to the colours that you'll put in your room. Incandescent light bulbs provide warm light with a touch of yellow or an amber glow, and these are warm in tone. Bright and warm colours like reds, yellow and oranges will appear more intense, whilst the cooler colours like blues or green will be dulled. So that's with the incandescent light bulb. Standard fluorescent lights give off a cool, slightly bluish light, and these work well with cooler colours like blues or greens. And then halogen lights are closest when it comes to replicating a natural light source, and these are the most white and bright, and they don't really distort colour all that much as the other artificial light sources do. But they can sometimes cool down some of the colours, and this is but ideally, even though they do that, the shift from the daylight to the artificial light is a lot less jarring. So it seems to have just a steadier transition from putting the light on to losing your natural light. And then light emitting diodes, or LEDs, are the most flexible of bulb choices because they can be warm or cool. And then warm or cool light is produced from colour temperature, which is measured in units called Kelvin, or it may be signified with just a K in brackets. So a low Kelvin value produces a warm yellow light, which is great for creating cosy ambiances, and high Kelvin values produce cool blue light that is more energizing. And just to give you an idea of these Kelvin values and the impact that they have based on that warm light and the cool light, a candle has around 2000 kelvins of value, and the sun is 6,000. So that just kind of, I think that's just awesome, that how much energy and light that we get from the natural sun. So, but how little we can get from an artificial light source, but you still can create amazing spaces and ambiances in using these. But what actually makes that happen is the Luxe level of lighting. And this is otherwise known as the brightness of light. So whether it's natural or whether it's artificial, this will affect the overall space. So calculations of lumens, which is the light output, which is the bottom left image, versus the size of the space can have positive and negative results in the final design scheme. So as an example, I've just popped these two images in to show you that the upper image is an example of a large spacious room that is absolutely flooded with natural light. It's got a very high Luxe level. And while it looks lovely, light and airy, the effects are that if it's too pure a white on the walls or a very delicate off-white on the walls in that amount of natural light, then it's just going to become bleached out. And then smaller rooms with duller colours in the low Luxe levels can become cold and dreary looking spaces. So finding a good balance of room sizes versus the lighting and the correct value of the colour used is necessary for creating a pleasant colour scheme in that area. And then sheen levels in paints also affects the colour. High gloss and mid-sheen finishes can intensify bold colour, making them look more vibrant, whereas matte finishes in the same colour will offer a more subtle appearance. And just like deeper or paler colours will reflect or absorb light, so do sheen levels on surfaces. So in these top images, we can see that a really shiny surface can create watery patterns, or it can totally bleach out the colour on wall areas. This is mainly when it's applied directly next to a window or what has high Luxe or luminous levels coming in. And then while matte finishes have a much softer appearance, the other benefits from them is that they can also hide surface imperfections in walls, which offers a much cleaner finished result in the overall paint finish. And colour can be used to influence wall and ceiling heights as well. This is particularly important in rooms. High ceilings can be lowered by applying colour and can be particularly enveloping if you also bring that colour down onto the upper wall area, as shown in the right-hand image. Alternatively, painting all adjacent wall surfaces in the same colour, as shown in the first image, also creates an heightened effect. And keeping low ceilings in a light colour or a white will of course create an open sense of space, and this will allow light to scatter more, giving the appearance of more upper surface area. And if the space is particularly small with no substrates that you can kind of manipulate, then the best thing to do is deflect from this by drawing the eye toward another point of interest. Painting doors, frames and skirting slightly darker than the walls or the ceilings is quite appealing, and it does just kind of take your eye away from the fact that you're in a really small room with a low ceiling or a high ceiling. It just gives a different perspective on the area. So we know what light we have in our spaces, we know the orientation of rooms and the size of the room's dimensions, and we are now at the point where we're ready for selecting colour. So to do this, I picked the simplest option to explain, which is scaling colour by using a colour wheel. So one half of the colour wheel contains warm active colours and the other contains cool passive colours. So if you remember the psychological effects of colour, one side of the wheel has warm hues, which contains reds, oranges and yellows. This will uplift and excite, whilst the other side has cool hues such as blues, greens and purples. This will calm and soothe. So once we've decided which ambient setting that we want to create in that space, we then have a starting point on that colour wheel to start scaling colour from. So there's just 3 examples of colour formats here. The first one is an example of a tonal scheme or a monochromatic, and these are created using various tints, tones and shades of just one particular colour. And you can choose multiple colours from the same family for use throughout this room set, but generally, as a rule of thumb, deeper colours are better used nearer the floor level and lighter colours near the ceiling, because this will offer a better light reflection and gives the illusion of space. If you try it the other way around, the room may appear to shrink, but that might be a good thing if you are in a really open, airy space and you want to just create a little bit more comfort by drawing it in. The second example is contrasting or complementary schemes. Colours sit opposite each other on the colour wheel. Scheme sets from this method tend to be bolder and more dramatic, as they are generally used for feature or focal point areas. So you simply choose your first colour and then you look directly across the wheel for the one that sits directly opposite, and this will be your second colour. The tricky part with contrasting colour schemes is deciding which of the 2 colours that you want to choose to take precedence over the other, because if you try applying them both in equal amounts in that space, then they may clash. They'll fight for attention. And I wouldn't attempt any more than 3 colours in one space with focal areas. And I would make sure that if you do put 3 in there, that the third one is a different tone level to the other 2, maybe a pastel or a cream for interest and balance. And then the third example is a harmonious scheme. These are created using colours adjacent to each other on the colour wheel, or what at least sit close to each other. Now, unlike the contrasting colour scheme method, the harmonious colours can be of similar colour depth and they will still achieve a balanced look without one overpowering the other. And schemes via this method are normally better when using deeper, more intense shades, because with a harmonious colour scheme, the impact there is normally to achieve a dramatic feel in that space. So we have a general idea of how to scale a colour scheme, and we've got 3 colour formats that we could follow there. So what we now need to do is we need to apply them 3 colours in the area and make sure that it balances. It needs to be distributed evenly. And this is to make sure that it fits with all contributing factors that's going to fit in that area. So we can do this by using a simple rule of thumb that we have called the 60-30-10 rule. And you can use up to 5 colours in total, because ideally this rule of thumb is to normally include all design elements in this room space. So it will contribute to creating a completed finish. So considerations may include paints, flooring, fabrics, accessories, but you can still just use a 60-30-10 rule for a paint scheme in an empty room. It would still work.
The slide before, you said about using just maybe 3 colours, otherwise you get fighting within the room, the more dominant colour. So when you're using flooring and cushions and settees, etc., you think that a room should only really have 5 different colours in it, but blending into colour?
Yeah, no, not really. It don't mean that. It means, yeah, well, you can use up to 5, but it may mean that you'd use different tones. So if you imagine that sofa is a different colour from two of the cushions. One's contrasting in blue.
Oh, you're so good to me.
And the other one is a cream. It just means that there is a lot more elements to consider for the final result. So colours can be duplicated up to 5. It comes up. Let me just read this section and then you'll understand a bit better.
Okay.
So how it works, the 60% colour space is going to be the most dominant area in that room. So it's going to be the largest scale. This might be the ceiling, it might be the floor, it could be a large statement piece of fabric, or it could be a large piece of furniture. The 30% surface area would be an intermediate colour. Again, it could mean a ceiling if you've got vast wall spaces. It could be just a feature wall. If you've only got a small room and one of the rooms is a window and there's no scope for a feature, it may be a rug, it could be curtains, it could be blinds. And then the 10% space is going to be much smaller additions. So this might be your trim, your woodwork, just a cushion, a pelmet, or maybe an accessory item like a vase. But the key with implementing a 60-30-10 rule is repeating either the 30% or the 10% colour space at least one more time in that room, because this will add. So just to end this section, which there's just 2 more slides, just to tell you a little bit about the core palette that we use when we are scaling these schemes, because the colour palette actually supports these hints and tips when designing spaces. So it's called Voice of Colour, and we've developed this palette to be a personal collaborative colour program that does seek to engage its user, and that is no matter where they are at the start of their colour journey. Because we believe that colour is quite universal, but yeah, it's still so personal as well. That we have this saying that it's all about you, it's your personality, it's your style, and it's your 5 senses. And the stories are really important to the identification of all these many design styles and colours that are available today. And all the colours in the Voice of Colour collections will somewhere have had a story built around them, because it's never about considering just one colour when designing spaces. Customers want to look at a space now and they want to say, this is me and this is who I am. This is what these colours resemble for me as a person. So just to reflect that back, this slide basically is, I think this section could be really beneficial to the likes of landlords, because we understand that bold and vibrant schemes may not be suitable for rented properties, as we've already discussed, and mainly due to tenants wanting to put their own tastes in there, or they've got to fit their own furnishings in there. But what we can do is suggest a collection of really beautiful, non-clashing neutral colours that will work with many various colour complements in other elements such as furniture, but will be sure to stand out above, and I don't know if I dare say this word now because I might offend somebody, but the magnolias of the world, lights and midtones that would be easy to apply and end still in a multitude of design formats. So just looking at a neutral option, which is still not going to be heavily influenced in colour, but is just different. It's just more modern, I think, and it would have more of an impact with tenants than just a standard cream.
Are they all different colours then?
They're all different colours, yeah. They're all different colours. They look the same on there. The problem is with viewing colour on screen is you're using RGBs, which is red, green, blue primaries, and they're interconnected by light. So if your settings on your computer is not set correctly, you'll not see that colour correctly. That's why we always say never rely on looking at a colour on a computer screen. It will always be wrong.
Yeah. So the top one, you would then use all them 5 colours, but in different surroundings, like the settee, your floors, your walls, but that kind of combination. And then you can do that in your second layer. You've only got 4 in your bottom layer. So that will give you different contrasts in the room. Is that
yeah, well, I've cut the, I don't know how I've done that. Because I've rushed it, this slide, I've cut the names off the bottom, the middle and the bottom row. That is just an example of the top row is really neutral greys. The middle row is greys, but has a hint of warmth. So it may have a yellow undertone so that it's more taupey. And then the bottom row is warmer still. So it's more on the red side of an undertone. So it'll have a warmer effect of a grey.
Okay, and do you do these kind of charts where this is available for us to use as members?
Yeah, I can build these, yeah.
Because that would be really kind of good, different color schemes right across the board. I'm only asking because I got that now, the way that that's been explained, I totally understand that color, the grays, and I want to do my hallway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as I said to you, Donna, we are doing my hallway. Yeah, she's going, no. Yeah, because I'm refurbing the whole of my house, so that'll be fascinating. And that would be perfect for my hallway.
Well, the idea behind these neutrals as well is when we talked about the spaces that that may be north facing, so it'll be a cooler room. You could still have a really, really modern neutral colour in there, but you would just warm it up by having that warm undertone to the back of that grey, which makes it which will make it not look so concrete looking and industrial and cold.
And don't forget landlords, and I'm only speaking, I walk into a room and I go, oh, it's big and it's bright, because they've put the old fashioned houses, they've knocked the way through. So you've got the back and front, it's a big space. And you go, what colour? Now I've walked into rooms where we've painted it all white and you go, wow, that's too bright. And there's nowhere to really go to help you. But these colour charts would be superb to do that across different ranges of different colours. If we can do that, sorry, Gary, if I'm putting you on the spot, because I do that with pleasure. But can we do something like that? Because members would help them choose the right colours for the right reasons, and not just go, well, I'm going to do a feature wall and I'm going to do it purple because I've got some purple cushions or whatever, especially in the HMO market. And when people walk into an HMO market, they want it to be inviting, to be different to the person down the road.
I think the beauty of them, Nick, as you say, is that people, I think I'm right in saying this, Donna, that if somebody wanted to pick a colour scheme containing 3 different colours, you could pick any 3 off there and be confident that each one would go with each other. And I think that'd be...
Yeah, if you're bold enough, you could even select from the top, middle and bottom row. So you were integrating a cool with well, I don't know if I'd do all 3, because you've got one what might have a yellow undertone and one what might have a red undertone, so it might clash a bit, but you could definitely use top, middle or top, bottom, or just middle and bottom. You can definitely do that. It's just about recognising the room and how much light is in there and how the temperature feel of that room is before selecting the colour. And I think with these as well, great, because they're just greys and beiges and neutrals and taups, it's gonna take no more application of one of these colours than what it would a magnolia. The only difference would be is probably the price of paint, but that's one for you to sort out, Gareth.
Yeah.
Don't get involved in that. But other than that, the application is exactly the same as a magnolia.
Well, you've got Gareth up there. If we buy more colour, Gareth, you're going to have to look after us.
Always look after you, Nick. And I've just seen a fantastic question come up there, but I'm sure Anthony will pick it up at the end. But
we're in questions now.
We are here at the end, actually.
Brilliant.
Where is it?
So as you said, I'll go through a couple of these then. First question: what would you choose for a ceiling?
Well, white has always been the most preferred. And I think I mentioned that as well in this section, where if it's a small room and you've not got much natural light, I would probably keep it white just for that extra light reflectance. You can always manipulate that as well by using uplighters as opposed to downlighters. But ideally, one thing that is becoming more and more talked about in my world when I'm, you know, looking into trends and stuff like that, is just to have a subtle colour on the ceiling. That's a good choice if you want to bring that ceiling down a bit and make it a bit more cozier. But one thing to remember is if you do go for a colour on the ceiling, if you put the same colour on the ceiling that you have on your walls, it will undoubtedly look a couple of shades darker because of how the light reflects downwards. So, but I'm not adverse to putting colour on a ceiling. I would do it. I think it's quite nice. So one thing I've seen a few decorators doing is they're just colour blocking the entire of a space in one colour. So they're doing the ceiling, the walls, the skirting, the doors, the frames, all in one colour, and it just all blends. But then they're using their furnishings and accessories to create the interest elsewhere, and it just keeps all the surface elements, the paintable surface elements, consistent. It's a great idea.
Okay. Gareth, if you were talking about your question earlier on of being interesting, then feel free to read it out yourself, because I actually know what these words are.
To be honest, it wasn't my question. I think it was one by, I think it was Mike Stott, but I'll just go to mine. If putting a encrusted dado in a hallway, so a dado from skirting to halfway up the wall, let's say, would you paint the panels in a lighter or darker colour at the bottom or top of the wall? So if you've got a hallway that's not got that much natural light, would you go for the darker colour at the bottom because that's where it might get marked up a bit, and the lighter at the top?
Yeah, you could do that. That's the most traditional method, isn't it? That's what people normally do. But you could switch it. The key question there is a durable product.
Yeah.
I mean, don't the encruster have to have a certain product on it anyway? Which
it has to have a historic, an oil-based eggshell type product.
So really, the answer to that question would be how much light and the direction of the light. Like I said, if you've got say a light fitting, which is more of an uplighter, so the light shines upwards, then you're not scattering any light down. So maybe the lighter effect would be at the upper wall and the darker one at the bottom. Yeah. But if you have a downlighter, what scatters a good level of light across that hallway, then you could put a darker colour on the upper.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
It's all about the light. The question is really of how much light is in that space.
Okay, thanks, Donna.
So what would be a passive colour then for a south-facing room?
Any blue, green. Well, it depends what the room's use is. If it's a bedroom, it could be, you could put any green, blue or purple in there. They're all passive colours. Blues tend to feel cooler than the other two. And I tell you what is particularly nice in south-facing rooms, these teal colours that are kind of a midway between a green and a blue. And if you get them in like a mid-tone, so maybe an LRV of around 50, so they've got some depth to them, they can really, really just bring that temperature feel down. And they almost have that classic type of finish on them as well.
Right, I've got to send my apologies because I've got to go. I've got some personal stuff to do and I've got to go and talk to somebody else. So Anthony's going to finish this off. Donna, we'll talk tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming on, Gareth and Kieran. And members, the last part of this presentation is just as good. I hope this has been educational and helpful. And you can always email in if we've missed something or you want to do something. And Gareth's there if you want to have a chat with him. Okay, I've got to say good night. I've got to shoot. All right. See you all.
Bye.
Take care, bud.
Bye.
Donna, could you provide some charts of colour schemes with colours listed as 60, 30, 10, as you had the example before?
Of course, yeah. All you would need to do is pick, say, I don't know, however many they want. If they wanted 6 colour schemes, so you'd have 6 colours, three rows. You'd have your 60, 30, 10. In fact, the Johnstone's trade colour cards actually have them categories sectioned off. So when you open and you look at the colour section in the back of a Johnston's trade colour card, all the colours are 60% on the top section, the middle section is 30%, and then the bottom 2 row of colours in the colour card are your 10%. So it's already there. But I can do some bespoke colour designs. Yeah, that's no problem. It's easy to do.
And final question for this bit then. Gareth asked this previously, but could you review the pricing on whites, not pure whites, and other colours such as pastels, as these get hit with the higher colours despite needing less pigment?
I think we've discussed this at length. The pricing is deemed to be competitive across the board. I get why the question is being asked, but we price our pricing structure the way it is because we take into account the amount of colorant that we use, and we find that it balances off the deeper colors against the lighter colors, which obviously you sell more of. That we need to get the prices we get for the price differential on color. So to actually change that is not something we'd be looking at.
Okay, brilliant. Shall we move into section number 3 then?
Yeah, are we still running good? You can see everything all right?
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant. So, okay, this is quite a large section, this, so I'll try and keep it as brief as I possibly can, because I imagine we're probably way over time now already. So the third and final instalment is the trend forecast for 2021. As I've mentioned, it's quite a large chunk, so depending on where we are, I'll cover over what needs to cover over and I'll skirt over what I don't think is necessary. But the idea behind this is you need to understand the stories to arrive at the colour palettes, because they do all kind of conjure together. So meet the team. These are our colour stylists for 2021. In the run up to the Global Colour Workshop, which is held annually, we personally attend as many design, automotive, consumer electronic shows, conferences, and then we share this collected information throughout all of the team. And coming from 11 different countries around North America, Europe and Asia makes the team quite diverse in their colour knowledge and experiences. And then we're also considering the fact that we're working in both commercial and residential market sectors. And these stylists are specifying colours for the things that you as a consumer will use every single day. So this is the car that you drive, the appliances in your home, electronics such as mobile phones, headphones, laptops, much, much more. It's very, very variable. So the information is studied intensely, and then it's used to create many design boards, colour samples and other materials. And then we align the most relevant of that data that we think will impact colour and design directions for the next couple of years. And it's worth noting as well that PPG is actually an industry member of the WGSN, which is the world's leading fashion and consumer trend forecasting services. So the expertise and knowledge that these stylists have and how they work with the information that they collect, basically we gravitate to different colours at different points in our lives. And this is based on our demographics, lifestyle interests and societal influences. And fashion also influences the home decoration, even though you might not think it would, it really does. And we customise the runway directions to resonate with that, because customers want to see what's in hotels, in retail, in healthcare, and then in their own homes as well. But we appreciate that fashion colours don't always translate to what works in the home and on the walls. So we then have to look at the textile market, what colours are launching in fabrics and furniture and window treatments and other accessories. And we also look at the tile and wood and metal markets, because all of these markets pull from the same big trends bucket to determine their colours, their textures and their own stories. Because when it comes to it, we influence as much as the trend influences us. And in order for colours to resonate and connect with us, to drive us to a purchase, then they have to reflect us. So what's happening in society and what's happening inside of us. And knowing that and understanding that will make the paint selections all the more relevant. So from all the research that we pulled together, we built a timeline that extends into about 5 years. And we looked at major influences that have happened in the past year that have impacted how we would consider colour for 2021. And obviously one in particular, what everybody knows about, is COVID-19. This has had a massive effect on the globe and how people live their lives. And we then connected the timeline with various adjectives that describe what the world is feeling. And these words are nostalgia, resiliency, optimism, wellness, and even compassion. And then after a bit of a tidy up of the timeline, we were able then to filter that information through this greener, kinder, smarter, brighter bucket, which then started us on our journey to looking into the trend themes and the stories. After seeing all of those influences, we're still seeing wellness trending heavily, but now it's becoming more about how we are feeling versus the physical and the mental wellness. It's a deeper understanding of what wellness actually means. And we've had to become more agile, because after this period of fragility, I'm sure all of us have been feeling like this, and resiliency. We've already seen that this in January, but it became more apparent after COVID happened. And finding compassion, not just for ourselves, but for each other, for architecture, for nature, finding that act of kindness that we felt the world is actually craving. And then we're seeing this trend of this slowed down lifestyle and considered consumption. Consumers will increasingly prioritize time affluence, a lifestyle that avoids overburdened schedules and workaholism in favour of leisure and emotional well-being and more sleep instead. And as circumstances force people to slow down the pace of their lives, expect a reevaluation of what time well spent will look like. So this picture might not mean much, but it's called the Nixon approach, which is a Dutch stress-reducing practice. And this is about slowing down and doing absolutely nothing, which enables more time then for people to be more creative in their minds. So it's worth noting at this point that all our trend themes and stories are built on psychology of colour and colour personalities. And with these subjects in mind, our direction for the 2021 Global Colour and Design Trends arrived at Transcend, with an overarching message of transcending values. So values-led businesses are becoming increasingly important for a consumer, particularly one that's looking to ensure that their lifestyle aligns with their changing values. And the most frequently used words in conversations describing this, our new future, is well-being, sustainability, technology, and connection. And the word transcendence comes from a Latin prefix, trans, meaning beyond, and then the word scandere, meaning to climb. So when you achieve transcendence, you've gone beyond ordinary limitations. And the word is often used to describe a spiritual or religious state or a condition of moving beyond physical needs and realities. So it was really, really quite fitting for what people are wanting to achieve in their own personal lifestyles. So in the past, we've always had 3 or 4 theme stories along with a dominant colour that's resonated with and supported the trend themes. So for 2021, we're being a little bit different. We still have 3 categories to showcase. However, instead of having one supporting colour for the whole trends, we are having a collection of supporting palettes instead. And one in particular that will be the dominant palette. And we refer to this as our palette of the year. And this is big news for us because this is rarely being seen on the design market. And the reason we've done this is because when we were forecasting with the global colour team at the start of last year, we identified different trending colour palettes for our professional customers. And this includes architects and interior designers as well. So prior to COVID, this warm beige colour seemed to be bubbling at the top of everyone's trend reports. And more importantly, it was highlighting that there was this shift from the very popular greys that we've seen for the past 10 years. And it's now moving over to warmer beiges. And with the societal influences telling us that people are seeking more comfort, mindfulness, kindness, and warmth in their homes, this is exactly what our common colour Transcend represents. So it's seen here on the left. Transcend is a warm beige. It has a delicate pink undertone. It's ideal as a warm neutral. It doubles as an alternative to greys, but it can also transition with warmer greys as well. And the Transcend colour promotes comfort, compassion, kindness, and balance. And as the pandemic started hitting all areas of the world, the global colour team saw a need to take another look at our colour forecast based on these shifting needs of spaces. Because homes are now becoming workspaces, teaching environments, we've identified Transcend, Big Cypress and Misty Aqua as the versatile palette that we need right now, or consumers need right now. And by providing a palette of the year rather than just one colour offers more options to work with to create that feeling of comfort in that space. And these colour combinations really do offer warmth, calm and an element of freshness that can be very flexible. And implementing the 60-30-10 principle, where we balance the colours based on the size of the area, allows all three of these colours to either support each other together or be used individually as a dominant colour in the space. So the palette has a human connection to well-being and sustainability, bypassing fears, transcending limitations, and aiming for a more balanced world with compassion and kindness. So that's the palette of the year. So we're not having a specific colour of the year, we're having a palette of the year, but Transcend will support on all of the three colour stories. So the Be Well theme is the leading category which supports our palette of the year. This is all about well-being. It embraces beauty, innovation, opportunity, an opportunity that comes from living with wellness as a priority in our lives. It holds a more mindful approach to consumption and has a focus on timeless and durable materials. And it's about slowing down the pace, having more mindful experiences that will boost emotional and mental well-being through comforting interiors, embracing simplicity as a restorative luxury, creating a balance and a sense of stability. So the colour palette is quite soothing and sophisticated. They're soft and muted pastels, pigmented midtones, with the addition of warm yellow and a deeper blue, and a fresher aqua that allows for a more varied colour styling than just simple minimalism. And the attitude behind the Be Well palette is about coming away from this always on culture. A 2019 survey by American Psychological Association found that an estimated 275 million people are now suffering from anxiety disorders on a global scale. So the consumer in this trend theme is seeking hibernation, to stay in, having people over as opposed to going out, because doing nothing is seen as being the best form of self-care. And combined with a growing interest in low waste living and sustainability, consumer modes of consumption are slowing as well and becoming more purposeful. So the strategy behind this is to greenify your life. Designers will turn to sustainable materials across product categories, including repurposed plastics, biomaterials, natural waste, and new composites. Products and materials will be designed to stay in use, reduce waste and pollution, and be crafted for a second life. And in a bid for a healthier lifestyle, urban living and an increased interest in cooking shows has created a desire for providing homegrown supplies. So plants are now being used to screen otherwise open plant spaces and creating interiors that are clearly zoned. And I think the link here is that people are now growing herb gardens around the kitchen areas, just to give that feeling of nature indoors, but also having a staple supplement of their own grown foods. Design influencers will see spaces that evoke a sense of calm, provide comfort and clear the mind. It's simple, arched lines. They inform products large and small with clean curves and essential contours. In interiors, we're looking at soft tones. These are making a comeback. Beige is complemented by a muted shade of pink in warm patterns and various ranges and styling. And simple sustainability, the importance of this is inspired in surfaces with the environment in mind. Products are simple with minimalist forms and neutral colours. And while chalky and smooth finishes also give products a sensorial and tactile quality. The second story is called Beetroot. This explores the revival of localism and the value of looking to the past to inform an uncertain future. So more with an emphasis on primitive design, elemental references and craftsmanship. So we do this by offering reassurance, create a feeling of protection and comfort and safety and security through design. So it's about leveraging the local as well, communicating strong ties with local identity, looking closer to home to forge an emotional connection with consumers and reconnecting with nature, incorporating natural salvage materials and embracing the elemental and the purposefully imperfect. And as you can see from the Beetroot colour palette, it is about anchoring reality. The palette's a mixture of organic and heritage influences to reflect timeless designs with soothing midtones and rich darks that have a warm and earthy feel. The attitude for this theme is about resilience, the ability to resist, absorb, recover, and adapt successfully to adversity or a change in conditions. So the consumer profile for the Beetroot tribe is a group who are desperate to redefine the global hustle, hard work cycle. And they'll look to plant roots in their community as well, ushering in a new era of localism. And they'll seek more time and money to spend in their local communities and will want products that have a sense of craftsmanship to them, where the imperfections in organic forms caused by the hand are celebrated as something being beautiful. So the strategy is all about upcycling, first developed in response to overconsumption, with so many goods being thrown into dustbins and recycling tips despite still having plenty of life left in them. So as creativity helps to both stimulate and soothe the mind, consumers are now not only tackling DIY projects around the home, but they're also looking to revisit traditional crafts, restoring and mending and upcycling old pieces of furniture. And in design elements, along with this return to nature, we'll be seeing less polished surfaces and more nuanced tactile surfaces. And this is through handcrafted furnishings and natural rough-hewn materials, which are in keeping with the eco-friendly ethos of reusing and repurposing. And experts are predicting that we'll also be seeing a lot of layering in of vintage and recycled objects alongside of new ones. Materials take on a natural element. They are raw, they have an unfinished look. Momentum of marble continues, particularly with brands using natural materials for all furniture categories. And new colour combinations are being used from warm earthy tones to rich dark hues. And the styles have a neoclassical influence as products get a timeless look. Reference archives for heritage, motifs and metallic silver finishes for a minimalist, polished take, referencing the reconstructed legacy trend, but products are both modern and timeless with nods towards neoclassicism. And then surprisingly enough, as consumers continue to look around the world for interior inspirations, even those who don't have the time and means to travel are still inspired by cultural capitals that international goods can provide. Pinterest has reported a 309% increase in searches for Spanish-style bathrooms, as well as a 2,080% increase in searches for Indian living rooms. So as consumers aim to fill their homes, evidently they're looking for print, pattern, texture and colour. Of course, a lot of this is built up in furnishings as opposed to the paint categories, but it just gives you an indication of where we're looking at being able to complement paint schemes to these other elements. And the third and final trend is Be Wild, a playful mood with an emphasis on soft surfaces, plump forms to tie into overarching themes of creativity. An evolution of primary colours sees the multicolour palette move towards a curated look. And we do this by expecting the unexpected, pairing bright colours and audacious patterns, seeing the fun in designs, adding personality to absolute everything, taking a mood-boosting mindset when designing, and customization is the name of the game. If you can dream it up, you can definitely have it. The colour palette is activating optimism. It's a combination of strong colours that can be combined together to give a very bold and creative concept, or it can be toned down as well with the addition of the grey and brown neutrals. And yes, pink is here again, as it was mentioned earlier in the presentation. But the attitude with this theme is about a change occurring. It's about, by 2022, radical optimism will push through the negative and result in immense feelings of joy and pleasure. So globally, we are in a crisis. From post-truth and fake news to rumour mills, we are now believing in accurate and false information. And society has become more polarised in its opinions, continually overstating what's wrong and what's bad. And the media has grown substantially more negative, helping to fuel this crisis. So by far the most dichotomous cohort, which is the new optimists, range from Gen Zs to boomers. And it's not just the youth who are determined to find joy. Aging is being rebranded. It's shifting to cultural narratives from ageism to ableism. And a generation reborn will be engaged, active and creative, boomers and seniors preparing for the next chapter of their lives with vitality, and they are seeking new opportunities for personal growth and exploration. And these new optimists strive for age equality. Just because they're at different life stages doesn't mean they've stopped living. And smart companies are now investing in the greying workforce, which is really interesting. And the strategy behind this theme, in a period of prolonged uncertainty, will be ways of working that become more fluid than ever before. Technological and societal changes continue, adaptability will be key. And from innovations in technology to economic, social and political shifts, good business leaders are preparing for a future that will look vastly different to the world that we know today. And the second great revolution that our decade will experience will be the quantum computer, which is a machine that has the ability to process things millions of times faster. So a problem that took 10,000 years to solve, or would do today, with traditional computers will just take a few seconds in the future. And this is where the consumer within this trend will look toward adaptability within these changes. They will unlearn their past to allow for ideas and systems in new ways. They will believe in other people and choose to be positive and fight against all the bad and negativity that is happening in the world. And they'll also believe that climate can change for the better. They will be creative, ironic and surprising. And this theme is not specifically aimed at the younger generation. Whether 18 or 80, it is for anyone who has a young mind. So needless to say, the design elements are wild. It's all about embracing joy, injecting personality, excitement, warmth and character into spatial and product designs as consumers look to find happiness from their surroundings. And the pleasure principle will be an important direction for both lifestyle and interiors. Its central role will create intrigue, raise a smile, allure and engage its user. And energetic brights and accent neons remain a strong colour direction for statement pieces and compositions, creating surprising pairings. We've got vivid orange, zesty limes, punchy pinks and dynamic purples, along with saturated levels that add a sense of intensity and confidence. And the tones in these colours are unashamedly artificial, with the strongest used as trim or a highlight, but can also be used all over for directional standalone items. And we can expect to see postmodern furniture, fabrics, ceramics, glass and metal objects as well. And designers take a flexible and spontaneous approach to greenery with plants and pots that can be moved around as space to cater to multi-used areas. and give commercial spaces a homely and lived in look by using pots of different sizes and shapes, providing a rustic and bohemian feel. And while the clustered displays will allow the eye to move around the room and direct the flow of the space. So just to summarise the 3 trends for 2021, Be Well is about making space for comfort, intimacy, support, relief and joy. Be True is about reinventing the traditional know-how. Be Wild is about reclaiming power, infusing new energies, moving lines and sharing forward-looking values. And I think while this section may be quite overwhelming to a lot of people, and for some I imagine possibly very irrelevant to the business purposes, but actually I think the results of these stories have come from all our direct consumers. This is what they are feeling. This is what they want to see change to help them live more purposeful lives. And after all, with a nod toward all the lockdowns and isolations that we've experienced over the past years, this has resulted in consumers having a lot more time on their hands to spend delving into business ethics. So it's no surprise that moving forward, I think they are going to control the wallet, and businesses will have no choice but to address new strategies if they want to keep the money coming in. So it really is quite a good one.
I think you're dead right there, Donna. You know, we've as a nation, as a race, really, we've spent the last year locked indoors, staring at the same 4 walls. So the slightest difference in color makes all the difference, particularly now. I think that was absolutely fascinating, the extent to which you guys go into different trends and that sort of thing, all for the sake of a color. I can't believe it, to be honest. But you are right. Let's be realistic. You know, I remember when you showed that office space with the green wall and the pink wall and the bricks over the top, and I just thought, well, let's be realistic. So a couple of questions that have come through. The trend colors, and they actually wrote this before that Be Wild one. The trend colors are very standout, very sort of in your face colors. How would you use them in an actual residential real life property? Is there a way to water them down with, you know, off whites and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, the trend palettes you see are all about personality types. So this is where, if you remember earlier in the presentation, we were talking about application of colour. And I know this is going to be a really difficult topic because not a lot of landlords get to know the tenants before, you know, letting them rent the properties. But to be able to have a conversation and gain a little bit more understanding of the tenant and the needs is where you can kind of look and think what personality type that person may be, which then helps you kind of place them into a category and think, oh, I think this palette of colour would suit, you know, what they're trying to achieve and what they're after, how they want to live their lives. So it's about asking questions, I think, with the tenants, isn't it? It's about saying, you know, what do you want to get out of the space? Why are you here? Or, you know, and find a little bit more from them. But the colour palettes themselves, when we put these together, we put them together based on personalities, but then we always try to include a pastel, mid-tones and strong tones so that the colours can be integrated together. So you can use the pastel for main walls, mid-tones for full walls, all walls, and the bold colours you can integrate between the two for feature and focal points. So we always try to incorporate that in each of the trend stories and palettes when we're creating them.
Oh, Sarah's actually popped in the chat here. It's not about the colour, it's about the impact that it has on you that's worth the effort. And I think that's key. You mentioned earlier on, Donna, that when a prospective tenant or prospective buyer, whoever it is, walks into your property and they can see that you've put that effort in and you've tried to make it your own and you've you know, gone out your way to personalize that, straight away, you know, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're going to be thinking, this person cares about their property. This person cares about the way that I'm going to be living in this property. And that sets you apart. You you know, miles away from every other property that is just white and magnolia. So another question that came through was, in HMO or buy-to-let properties, we need longevity. So can you recommend the safer colours for longevity? Because what is a trend in 2021, maybe old hat by 2023? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. But if you remember when we were talking about the colour team and the diverse business sectors that they come from and the research that they're looking into for their business sector, some of them actually forecast 5 years ahead. And what's becoming apparent this year is we're noticing a kind of continuity colours. And this is where the colour trends, they always overlap anyway. Even though we have a trend for each year, there is always a 6-month overlap. So they actually last 18 months. They always last 18 months. It always filters in. If you were to download our trends book, it will always say 2021, 2022 and so forth, because there's still an overlap. But more so than that, the colour shifts from year to year is only changing slightly. They're not major shifts. So even though you might have a different colour, say for example, you had a collection of, I don't know, rich jewel tones in red, blues and greens. They may still trend for next year, but it might have just lost that vibrancy. It might just be a little bit more duller, a little bit more black in it. So they are only steadily filtering in. So I don't think that you're ever going to see dramatic, massive changes. I say that, but actually next year, there may be quite a shift between palettes, because next year, I've just been working on the workshop already this past 3 weeks for 2022 trends. And we've already identified that year, we're still not out of the woods yet. There's still a high level of uncertainty, but the colour shift has taken on a different direction because people don't want to feel down and miserable. They're needing a real big uplift now. People are desperate just to have, you know, something other than being stuck in. And
I was just going to say, Donna, don't say that. You promised me radical optimism for next year. That's where me going.
This is this year. Yeah.
Is it?
It's this year, 2021, these trends, yeah. So they're very current.
Can't wait. Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on, Donna. We've probably got a couple more questions because they all banged in right at once toward the end. So if I've got anything extra, I'll send them across in an email. And if you could sort of get back to us on the sort of specific and more general questions. But no, thank you so much, Donna, Gareth, and Kieran for joining us tonight. Paul Hilliard, I think you're still on the call here. You'll be taking the helm next week as we talk to a panel of mortgage advisors. So I'll let you go into that.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, and thanks everyone at Johnston's, Donna, Gareth, and Kieran. Very, very useful. You know, I'm looking at it from my service accommodation viewpoint. I'm looking at it from HMOs. I'm looking at it as and when I've just had somebody leave a single let. So that's going to be useful. I was thinking of just trucking grey at it, but I might do something else. Thank you, Donna. So looking at next week, I don't know about you, but every landlord I've ever come across has always run out of money because, yeah, unlike common beliefs, we're not all filthy rich. I'm sure everyone on here can sympathise or empathise with that situation, that you always want to do that bit extra, go that extra mile. So we've introduced recently Aroma Finance, which is a bridging company, and we're keeping a close eye on them at the moment because there's been a few niggles as regards their charges. So I'm just getting those checked out at the moment. But what we've got is two people I've known for a long, long time because I met them back in the early 2000s. One, and they're both in the lending type market, but they're both landlords. There's Lisa Williams of Key Mortgages, and she's been, if you're on Facebook groups, then you'll see Lisa on a regular basis talking about what you should or shouldn't be doing, and obviously making sure you keep within the legal guidelines. So she's on next week. And the other person is a guy called Rory O'Mara. So again, if you're in Facebook or on network presentations, then Rory's a very popular person there. And he's representing closebridgingfinance.com, but he's looking at really developments and even financing single and HMOs. So, don't let the name of his business put you off. So if you're looking at mortgages or borrowing or even lending, then these people are hopefully going to put you in the right direction. So don't forget to join us next week on Lock-In event number 2 of Series 3, or Lock-In 26 if you like me and Nancy, you've been here since.
You're going to keep asking me and I'll keep forgetting. Brilliant. Thank you, Paul.
If you want to talk about Nick, please do so now. He's not here. He can't listen to you. He's talking about Harrogate Pin. But no, hopefully, thank you for everyone who's joined us. Good to see some of the regulars here like Roger and Hitesh. So please join us next week, especially Sarah and Maureen. Good night, and over to you, Anthony.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, thanks again, Johnstones and members for showing up. Look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Night.